It usually doesn't start with a hotel room. It starts with a phone turning face down. You're sitting right there. Same couch, same person, same voice you know by heart. And yet something feels off. Not loud, not dramatic, just off. Their screen lights up for half a second. They glance down too fast. Their body shifts. Their tone changes by half an inch. Then they say, "It's nothing." And the room changes. You can feel it. Now you're still sitting beside them, but somehow you're not beside them anymore. It feels like there's a third presence in the room, and you can't prove it, but your nervous system already knows. And inside your head, it's instant. Why do I suddenly feel crazy? Am I overreacting? Why do I feel shut out? Why does this feel like betrayal before I even have proof? Why does loving them feel lonelier than being alone? Here's the truth most people miss. Avoidant cheating usually doesn't begin with lust. It begins with distance. It doesn't always start because they found someone better. A lot of the time, it starts because closeness began to feel exposing. Accountability began to feel threatening, and having multiple points of connection started to feel safer than being fully seen by one person. You're not failing at love. And this is not you being too much. If you've been trying to understand why someone can act attached to you while quietly keeping other people in orbit, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's happening beneath the surface, why it feels so confusing, and what this pattern is really protecting. Let's get into it. Most people believe cheating is simple. They think it means the person stopped loving you, got bored, or just had bad character. Sometimes that's true. But the real truth is deeper than that. And when you're dealing with someone who leans avoidant, the behavior often makes no sense until you stop looking at it like romance and start looking at it like regulation. Because your partner's nervous system is reading intimacy before their mind can catch up. That matters. A lot. And to be clear, not every avoidant person cheats. Plenty don't. But when someone with strong avoidant patterns does keep exes around, entertain flirtation, hide emotional side connections, or cheat outright, it's often not because they feel too much love for many people. It's because being deeply accountable to one person starts to feel like losing freedom, losing control, or being emotionally cornered. Not because they don't feel. Not because they're heartless. Not because you were impossible to love. But because closeness can hit their system like pressure. That's the part most couples never figure out. When safety leaves a relationship, love doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it goes underground. What looks like indifference is often deactivation. What looks like I don't care is often I cannot stay open and protected at the same time. So they manage distance. They create exits. They keep backups. They split intimacy into compartments. One person for comfort. One person for validation. One person for fantasy. One person for the feeling of being wanted without the weight of being known. It's not healthy, and it's definitely not harmless. But here's what nobody explains. The avoidant person is usually not only protecting themselves from you, they're protecting themselves from the vulnerability you awaken in them. That's why trying to pin them down harder often makes them more slippery. Because to an avoidant nervous system, pressure doesn't feel like love. It feels like danger wearing love's clothes. And once you see that, every confusing behavior starts to click. Not as an excuse, as an explanation. 1. The backup plan. Attachment. Here's the part no one talks about. For a lot of avoidant people, keeping multiple partners in reach is less about passion and more about insurance. Most couples think cheating begins when someone finds a more exciting option. But most people in relationships miss that avoidant patterns often create a need for emotional escape routes long before anything physical happens. The deeper truth is this: if intimacy feels like engulfment, then options feel like oxygen. The avoidant person may not consciously think, "I need a backup." But beneath the surface, something in them is saying, "If this gets too intense, I need somewhere to go. If one person can hurt me, I don't want all my emotional eggs in one basket." That's attachment logic, not mature love. It's like keeping one foot near the door. Not because they're leaving today, but because full presence feels too vulnerable. So the disconnecting version sounds like this. "Relax, it's just someone I used to talk to. It's not a big deal." And the connecting version sounds like this. "I can feel that I keep old doors cracked open when I'm scared. That's not fair to you, and I need to be honest about it." That sentence changes everything. Because now the issue isn't hidden contact, it's hidden fear. And when you do that, the relationship stops feeling like a mystery you have to solve and starts becoming something real enough to repair. 2. They don't just hide people, they hide need. And this is where it gets really interesting. A lot of avoidant cheating is not driven by hunger for another person. It's driven by terror of needing the person they already have. Most couples focus on the outside behavior. The texts, the secret follows, the emotional affair, the late-night "just checking in" message. But the deeper emotional truth is that avoidant people often experience dependence as danger. So when they start needing you more, not less, that can actually trigger the distancing behavior. Read that again. More attachment can create more withdrawal. Because beneath the surface, their nervous system may be saying, "If I need you this much, you can destroy me." So instead of moving closer, they scatter their attachment energy. Not deeper intimacy, not clearer honesty, not a brave conversation about fear, but little doses of connection spread across different people, so no one person matters enough to wreck them. That's why the pattern is so confusing. They can look invested and unavailable at the same time. The disconnecting version sounds like this. You say, "I feel like you disappear when we get close." They say, "You're overthinking everything. I just need space." The connecting version sounds like this. You say, "I feel like you disappear when we get close." They say, "I think closeness scares me more than I admit. And when I feel exposed, I reach for distance instead of telling you." That second response is emotionally available. The first one is emotionally defended. And when someone finally tells the truth about the fear beneath the withdrawal, the walls between you start to come down, without either of you having to force it. 3. Validation without vulnerability. Here's the trap most couples never see. Some avoidant people want the feeling of being chosen without the responsibility of fully choosing back. Most people in relationships think outside attention is only about ego. And yes, sometimes ego is part of it. But with avoidant patterns, validation can feel safer than intimacy because it gives warmth without exposure. That's why they keep old flames warm. That's why they answer the flirtatious DM. That's why they say, "I'm not doing anything," while quietly feeding something that should have been allowed to die. Because validation asks for almost nothing. Real love asks for presence. One gives them the hit of being wanted. The other asks them to stay emotionally naked when things get messy. And man, that difference is huge. Because one feels exciting, the other feels risky. Inside, their unspoken thought is often, "I want to feel desired, but I do not want to be fully accountable to what that desire means." So they hover, they breadcrumb, they keep people emotionally nearby. The disconnecting version sounds like this. "It's harmless, I just like talking to them. You're making it weird." The connecting version sounds like this. "If I'm honest, I've been using other people's attention to soothe myself instead of dealing with what's hard between us." That's not polished, but it is real. And that's the shift that turns a relationship that feels like emotional whiplash into one that finally has somewhere solid to stand. 4. Compartmentalization, the split life pattern. But here's what nobody explains. Avoidant cheating often survives through compartmentalization, not confidence. Most couples imagine cheaters as bold, calculated, cold, fully aware. Sometimes, sure, but a lot of avoidant people survive internally by splitting things into boxes. This box is my relationship. This box is my freedom. This box is my ex. This box is my private world. And as long as the boxes never touch, they can pretend nothing is wrong. That's the psychology. Compartmentalization protects them from feeling the full emotional weight of what they're doing. Because if all the boxes touched at once, they would have to feel the guilt, the grief, the responsibility, the conflict, the impact on you, and the truth about themselves, all at the same time. And that would flood their system. So instead, they live like a house with locked rooms, clean hallway, hidden mess. The internal monologue sounds like this. "It's separate. It doesn't affect us. I can manage it." But it always affects the relationship, because secrecy changes your presence long before the truth comes out. The disconnecting version sounds like this. "What you don't know can't hurt you." The connecting version sounds like this. "If I feel the need to hide it, that already tells me it's crossing a line." That is the adult standard, not perfection, integrity. And when someone stops dividing their life into emotional compartments, that's when their partner stops feeling like a problem to manage and starts feeling like a person to come home to. 5. When intimacy rises, so does escape. This is where it gets painful. A lot of people assume affairs happen when the relationship is dead. Sometimes, but not always. Most couples never realize that for an avoidant person, the moment of strongest temptation can come right when the relationship is becoming more intimate, more serious, or more real. Not after distance, during deepening. That sounds backwards, but attachment patterns are full of backwards. Moving in together, talking marriage, getting emotionally closer after a hard season, starting to rely on each other more. Those moments can wake up an avoidant nervous system like a smoke detector going off at burnt toast. It cannot always tell the difference between closeness and loss of self, so it sounds the alarm either way. And then escape starts to look appealing. Not because the relationship means nothing, but because it suddenly means too much. Bro, this is where people get it backwards. They think if they were cheating now, they must not care. But sometimes the fear is rising precisely because the bond is becoming real. The disconnecting version sounds like this. You say, "Ever since we got closer, you've pulled away." They say, "I don't know what you want from me. Maybe I'm just not built for relationships." The connecting version sounds like this. You say, "Ever since we got closer, you've pulled away." They say, "I think the more real this gets, the more I want to run, and I need to understand that instead of acting it out." That response creates safety, because now the fear is spoken instead of performed. And when fear gets named instead of disguised, the drift slows down, and the possibility of repair becomes real. 6. Secrecy is often about control. Here's the part that stings. A lot of avoidant people don't just hide other partners. They hide the entire fact that you have the power to affect them. Most couples think secrecy is only about getting away with something. But beneath the surface, secrecy can also be about control. Control over access, over information, over emotional exposure, over who gets to define reality. If they tell you the truth, they have to face your hurt. If they face your hurt, they have to feel what they did. If they feel what they did, they lose the distance that keeps them defended. So they minimize. They omit. They make you feel dramatic. They say it's nothing until you no longer trust your own body. That's not just dishonesty. That's nervous system management through control. Not openness. Not repair. Not the hard dignity of telling the truth early, but the temporary relief of staying hidden one more day. And the internal thought often sounds like this: if I tell the full truth, everything will blow up. If I keep control of the story, I can keep control of myself. But control is not safety. It just delays the collapse. The disconnecting version sounds like this. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react. The connecting version sounds like this. I didn't tell you because I was afraid of what the truth would cost me, and that fear made me dishonest. That sentence is brutal. But it's honest. And honest pain heals cleaner than hidden pain ever will. Because that's the moment the relationship stops drowning in the unspoken. 7. The real healing isn't loyalty theater. It's emotional integration. And here's what changes everything. If this pattern is ever going to end, it will not end with better excuses, more promises, or performative reassurance. Most couples think the answer is stricter monitoring, more checking, more passwords, more rules, more "prove to me you're not doing it again." Sometimes boundaries are necessary. Very necessary. But the deeper truth is that the pattern only changes when the person stops needing divided attachment to feel safe. That is the work. Not better lying, Not more convincing apologies. Not acting loyal while still emotionally living in fragments. But becoming someone who can tolerate closeness without reaching for escape. This isn't a communication hack. This is what emotional maturity actually looks like. It means learning to say, I want to run. It means learning to say, I keep outside options alive when I feel trapped. It means learning to stay present enough to disappoint someone honestly instead of betraying them secretly. And if you're the partner on the receiving end, your healing matters too. Because your nervous system has likely been living in confusion, hypervigilance, and unspoken grief. So the connecting version is not, just trust me and move on. The connecting version is, I understand why trust is broken. I'm willing to become transparent, accountable, and emotionally reachable long enough for safety to be rebuilt. That is what repair sounds like. Slow, clear, real. And when that happens, love stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like something strong enough to hold the truth. So if this video hit you hard, here's why. Because deep down, you already knew this was never just about random texts, old flings, or suspicious timing. It was about what those things meant. Distance, defensiveness, split loyalty. The feeling that someone wanted the comfort of connection without the courage of real presence. And once you understand that, you stop personalizing everything. You stop asking, what does the other person have that I don't? And start asking the better question. What is this person protecting themselves from by refusing to love in one piece? That changes you. It makes you sharper, calmer, more honest. This isn't a checklist. It's an invitation to become someone who can recognize patterns instead of getting trapped inside them. When you internalize this, you stop chasing mixed signals and start honoring what connection is supposed to feel like. Safe, clear, mutual, emotionally available. These aren't tips for a better relationship. They're the beginning of becoming the kind of partner and the kind of person who no longer mistakes inconsistency for depth, secrecy for complexity, or longing for love. Because real intimacy was never about being wanted by many. It was always about being truthful enough to be fully chosen by one. Love doesn't fall apart the moment temptation appears. It falls apart the moment someone would rather manage closeness than be honest inside it.